All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. We've just opened up today's Kretsu Academy. We're going to let Zoom do its thing and let people into today's session. Very, very excited to have Jose Gyamfi and Kara Cowan with Akoto Recruiting here to give us insights into the true cost of human capital. We're going to get started in just a minute or two as folks come in on the line. You may be sitting down to your lunch, and this is a really great opportunity to hear from industry experts from across who have such a vast and deep, rich experience. Um, you know, uh, here Ose, ex Meta, we got Kara, ex Medtronic. They're going to get into a bit. I'll read their bios, but very excited for today's session. Please do engage during today's session. There's going to be a couple of questions that pop up. Feel free to type those into the chat. Raise your hand throughout the presentation today. Osei, one of the co-founders, and Kara, to be happy to take your questions. We will do a Q&A after today's Kretsu Academy, and you will have an opportunity to really get in the nitty-gritty from these industry experts. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, full screen here, and we'll go ahead and jump right in. Okay, thank you, everybody. My name is Greg Hill, director here at Kretsu Forum Northwest and Rockies. Today is our Kretsu Academy for the month of October. Today's topic is the true cost of human capital, employment trends in today's world, featuring co-founders of Akoto Recruiting out of Los Angeles, California. We have Jose Gyamfi and Kara Cowan. They are our strategic affinity partners, and we are so blessed to have them here today. Such a wealth of knowledge, and they're going to be taking you through the nuances of the true cost of human capital. So appreciate having everybody here today. I have a couple of opening slides, and then we're going to get right into the meat and potatoes of today's session. First off, for anybody that's a guest here, if this is your first time to Kretsu Forum Northwest and Rockies, we are an exclusive membership organization. We are a group of accredited angel investors from across North America. We write checks as individual investors into companies. We host hundreds of events per year, both in person and online. And if you have interest in angel investing, if you're a capital advisor, you represent a family office, or you're a fund manager, or if you're a syndication partner, feel free to reach out to us, and our membership director, Stephanie Hoff, will also be happy to follow up with you as well. Our entire team and all our partners are predicated off this core values and our thesis of grit, growth, resiliency, integrity, and transparency. This is the correct way. We have a global footprint. We are representing the Pacific Northwest and Rockies region for Kretsu, but we are a global brand with over 60 chapters. You can see our footprint there, over 3,000 members, and we funded nearly 2,500 companies to date. We are also ranked #1 angel group in the United States, according to the Angel Capital Association and PitchBook, and the Angel Research Institute's annual Halo report. We find ourselves in great company. And this is based purely on the sheer volume of companies that we have coming through each year, and also the amount of funding dollars to come on an annual basis. So here's some important metrics from our last year's funding data. You can also see that PitchBook ranks us in some pretty big league tiers with Plug and Play, Alumni Ventures, Y Combinator, Andreessen Horowitz. So we really go toe to toe with the big guys. We also have a syndication network of angel groups. We have 81 partners that help share deal flow and bring entrepreneurs to us, and we share entrepreneurs that are viable investment opportunities. So we want to thank all of our syndication partners, family offices, capital funds, etc., for participating. If you're interested in learning more about this, you can contact me. Again, this is Greg Hill. All right, we also have a free Angel Insider Report. This is from our summer edition. You can find this on our LinkedIn. I think we're close to 45,000 followers on LinkedIn. So we do have a pretty strong footprint, but there's lots of really great information here. It's free for you. Be sure to check out the Angel Insider magazine. And lastly, we have a great resource called Kretsu Forum TV, where we have member-only access, but also some public access to our Kretsu Academies, presentation skills training, deal flow presentations, etc. So be sure to check that out at kretsuforum.tv. And with that, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to hand it over to Osei Gyamfi, our strategic affinity partner, to get into today's session, the true cost of human capital. And Osei, I'm going to give you screen share, and it's all yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Greg, for all the things that you do. If I can't say enough great stuff about Greg, very helpful, very insightful. And Kretsu is a great organization. We're happy to be an affinity partner. So, and obviously we also want to thank everybody for taking their lunch break, or, if they're not in the Pacific time zone, the hour to be able to sit and listen to kind of what it is that we have to be able to give. Kara and I are very proud of Akato and our ability to be able to not just service clients, but also help investors. So, being able to share this information on the true cost of human capital is something that's very important to us. All right. So obviously, this is our team. So for me, I am one of the co-founders. I started my career about 20 some odd years ago with a company called Aerotech. I believe Randy Nadalo is in here. One of the groups, he was a recruiter with me in that office back in the day. A lot of great recruiters came out of that particular office, people who have been able to start up companies like SpaceX, Tesla from the ground floor. And so for 20 years, I've been working both from the external aspect, learning what it's like to be able to service clients and find out what their specific needs are, what they need to be able to grow. Then eventually went to get my MBA in entrepreneurship because I had a passion for startups. That's one of the reasons why we created Akato Recruiting, was because that startup environment is something we want to be able to foster and help grow. We want to be able to help companies basically change the way that people do things. And so from there, I ended up becoming the first recruiter hired at an EV called Faraday Future, where I was tasked with taking the company from 150 people to 1,200 and eventually exit. That was successful. And the things I learned along the way, I want to be able to impart on a lot of startup companies that we work with currently. From there, I did some consulting before I went on to Meta, where I helped from the ground floor kind of recruit the team that it was able to create the metaverse. So the products that I worked on were Oculus Quest 1 and 2, Facebook Stories, Portal Plus, etc. And I got it, and also Facebook Reality Labs. So I got a really good chance to be able to learn a lot from that industry, and eventually got a chance to be able to do a TEDx talk based on my experience and my expertise. And since then, decided to create Akato Recruiting, which is a technical recruiting company, but with a little bit of a different flair that we'll get into later. So, and I'll let Kara introduce herself and her background.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. And again, wanted to thank Kretsu for our partnership and inviting us to speak this afternoon. We're super honored to be a part of this world-class group, and we can't wait to, see what else comes next. Again, I'm Kara Cowan. I'm the principal and co-founder of Akato Recruiting. I'm an entrepreneur and seasoned recruiting executive with over 21 years of experience. I've specialized in recruiting and talent management for a wide range of organizations, from startups to enterprise level. My expertise is sought after for working with diverse teams, hard to fill staff positions, coaching new and inexperienced executives. I have a very deep passion for scaling venture-backed startups, those particularly in seed to series rounds. My career has spanned with working startups. I have led organizations that have successfully gone public and been acquired by major companies like Stryker. My skill set covers human resources, technical talent acquisition, recruitment strategy, talent development, management, training, hiring process optimization, building strong teams, and promoting employee engagement. I specialize in industries such as biotech, pharma, medical device, health tech, aerospace, and government services.
And rounding out the rest of our team, we have Josiah Humphreys, who functions kind of as our project manager. He makes sure that we're on task, that everything is up to date and makes sense. And also, he has a great marketing mind. He at one point was listed as one of the 30 under 30 for Asia in 2017. And then, of course, we can't be an AI team without an AI head. So that would be Mikhail Ugor, who is a notable data scientist, who also has an expertise in AI and ML and has published several publications. So we have definitely a crack team of people who understand the industry, the business, and how those two things, AI and recruiting, can merge. So we do want this to be interactive. So we don't need people necessarily to shout anything out, but we do have a question for everyone. So the first question is, and you can enter this within the chat if you would like. Where does human capital rank amongst challenges that CEOs face in managing and growing their business? I'll give it another like 20 seconds.
Are we supposed to put
Yeah,
our
just type
answer
it
in the
into the
chat
chat.
box?
Yeah, just in the chat box. Yep.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to reveal the answer. So of course, that answer is number one, right? So it's the number one problem that people have listed.
Okay. The true cost of human capital. So according to research by the Conference Board, about 80% of CEOs globally cited human capital as their number one challenge. First up would be attracting top talent. Startups often struggle with this to compete with larger companies. Next, retention, high turnover rates. Speed, slow hiring processes can lead to missed opportunities. Another one would be cultural fit, ensuring new hires align with the company's culture, which is very, very critical and is usually number one thing that we hear, obviously outside of their skill sets and experience. It's culture fit, culture fit, culture fit. The other would be budget constraints. As you know, startups, obviously limited budgets. They're waiting for, funding rounds or to get to that next, obviously it's the product, but you need the people. So again, that's another a part of this.
And we also wanted to get into the top reasons why startups fail. And as funny as it is, a lot of times, people kind of focus on reasons number one and number two. The number one reason, obviously, is the product just doesn't work. For whatever reason, it doesn't fit with, there's no demand for it. Something might have happened, an act of God, pandemic, whatever it might be, but the product just doesn't fit. The next biggest reason is marketing, the go-to-market strategy. How are you actually implementing your product out into the world? But what most people kind of fail to realize is the last two biggest reasons are the company team or HR issues. And then, of course, the last is cash flow problems. Now, a lot of times you find that those two things are directly intertwined. Whenever a company is going through hard times financially, what's the first thing that, typically people notice about a company or their actions that they realize that they have an issue? And that is layoffs, right? Having the wrong people or a misshapen team is one of the major issues that a lot of companies have to be able to reach their potential. And so, of course, that goes into things like wrong staffing. This leads to project delays, which obviously increase salary run rates, which then burns cash. And from an investor standpoint, especially, that is something that they don't want to see. I've talked to investors who have said that, they've been in meetings where, they get very frustrated because the reason that companies are saying they're not hitting the marks is because they haven't found the right expert in a certain area. And to them, they're thinking to themselves, We gave you the money to be successful. Go find that person, right? Like for them, they don't want to hear a lot of excuses. And then of course, burn rate. If you don't have that person in play in order to get to the next stage of development or the next stage of the business, then you have people who are on payroll who you're still paying every 2 weeks, every month, every 2 months, that are not as optimal because you're not able to move at the pace that you need, which causes a problem. So, the critical hurdles for success, as long as the product fits and the marketing is intact, the next crucial element is staffing and cash flows. And then, of course, the proper staffing ensures the projects are completed on time, you're maintaining budgets, and your cash flows are where they need to be, which then also helps for marketing because you still have more dollars for marketing. And of course, if your product is in the right place with the right people, you're able to make sure that you're able to hit your goals and grow in the way that you need. Again, it's called company for a reason, right? The company that you keep. So not having the right employees at the right time can cause missed deadlines, result in burn cash, which then in turn basically stifles your business. Company morale goes down, investors are very frustrated, and the potential to hurt the ability to raise capital. Without that good company culture, milestone success, and the needed capital raises, a company is sure to fail. So going over the kind of what the standard hiring process is, if anyone in this presentation has ever been in a situation where you've had to be able to hire within an organization, you understand that this wheel is not, you're not a stranger to it. Obviously, identifying the hiring requirements is very important. And with startups, a lot of times, because it is a new organization and you're kind of learning on the fly, this is where a lot of time needs to be taken. Example, if you're bringing in somebody who's going to be a lead, chances are they also have to be willing to get their hands dirty, right? You want to be able to have that in the job description so that when you do end up hiring somebody who has that experience to be a lead, is a lead, etc., they understand that what they're going into is a startup environment as opposed to a large enterprise company where doing one thing only is kind of what they might be used to. From there, you obviously want to be able to create the job description. So you want to be able to write it in a way that is all-inclusive, understandable, and the people who are applying to this role or who are working in that role understand exactly what it is that's expected of them. A lot of times in the job description, you want to be able to put in percentages. What percentage of the job am I doing this, and what percentage of the job am I doing that? And then grade them on that come evaluation time so they know exactly how they're doing. After that is talent search. Talent search is the part where there's an entire industry based around it, which is recruiting, right? Whether it's you have an internal recruiter, you're doing the talent searching yourself, you're using an external talent acquisition partner. This is the part that can be the most tedious without understanding where the end in sight is going to be. And then, of course, after you end up finding the talent, you want to be able to shortlist and screen this talent, make sure that they are a fit, that they are fit for the organization and everything that they're trying to do, and kind of go from there. And then, of course, interviewing. You want to also make sure that you're interviewing for the right types of questions, the right types of things to be able to talk about, or the right type of aspects of the job. And you want to make sure you're asking the proper questions, because in interviewing, you can also get yourself in trouble. Example, something as simple as this. We're in Los Angeles. Let's say I'm hiring somebody from Sacramento and they tell me that they're a Sacramento Kings fan when I'm a Los Angeles Lakers fan. I ask them that question, right? Like I probe for that. If I don't hire that person, they could make the assumption that I didn't hire them because they're a Sacramento Kings fan, and then I might have a litigation on my hand. So the interview questions that you want to be able to ask have to be clean, concise, and strictly to the job. After that, of course, you want to be able to do your evaluation and offer employment. That has to be in line with what the industry is expecting. Negotiation and understanding what, where salaries are going, what candidates are looking for is very important at this juncture. And then, of course, introduction and induction of new employees. What's your employee branding, right? Like, so when someone comes on board for your company, what is it that's going to make them excited to come in every day? What's your company culture, and is your employee branding in line with that? What's the training like? Is there upward mobility? These are all things that people are going to have to think about when they're bringing on their employees.
So second question for y'all is, what are the two most expensive costs in regards to human capital?
And this is a completely a guess. So go ahead and just type in what you think those two costs would be. We'll give you 30 seconds.
Okay. We'll see if you guessed right.
Right.
It is
Okay.
sourcing and employee turnover.
Yep.
So, you know, what we hear is recruiting is so easy, right? What everyone perceives is expectation, like quick to find top talent at a minimal cost. It's cheap. Belief is posting jobs and waiting for the right candidates is sufficient. Misconception is hiring is simple, straightforward to everybody. But in all reality is recruiting takes longer and costs way more than anticipated. The biggest challenge is identifying quality candidates in the complex and resource intensive. Result delays in hiring lead to lost productivity and growth potential.
So the average cost of recruiting, and this is kind of the meat and bones of what we want to be able to get into, obviously depends on your industry, your volume, and also the leveling. But what we can tell you is that per role per month, the average cost of a job posting is anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a month. Now, if you're a startup company, a lot of times you're in a position where you might not have a big, robust internal recruiting team like some of the enterprise companies. And so if you are to outsource a user recruiter, you're looking at salary prices of about 20 to 30% of the first year salary. Now, if you're starting off hiring, what most companies do, from an executive level, talking director or VP, sometimes these costs can be upwards of $40,000-$50,000. I one time about a couple of years ago had a placement where it was somebody who was going to be a C-level person, and they were about $300,000, and it was about a $65,000 check. So you can probably imagine you're already paying somebody all of a sudden $300,000 a year. They obviously have their bonuses, they have their stock options, they have their FICA Food Suda, everything like that. And on top of that, you're also paying an agency $60,000 for finding someone, right? Like that is the current archaic way of recruiting. Akato recruiting does things completely different. We'll get into that later, but this is some of the costs that you're looking at. Additionally, you're looking at online tools. For instance, LinkedIn Recruiter, which can range you anywhere from $9,000 to $12,000 a year alone. You're looking at ATS systems, whether it be Greenhouse or Lever, etc. Those things are going to be pretty expensive. And then of course any other tools or anything else that might be of use there. Interview travel, and relocation, of course. Those things can range upwards of $5,000 to $10,000 if you're hiring somebody who is a strong candidate, but they have to come from a different state. Relocating them is going to cost quite a bit. Salaries and taxes, as I spoke about before, FICA, FUTA, SUDA, if you're in the States, unemployment insurance, etc. And then, of course, outside recruiting, internal recruiting, costs and referral programs, those can be anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 per hire. According to SHRM, the average recruiting cost to hire an employee is anywhere from $3,500 to $30,000, depending on your industry. So you can probably understand why a lot of these agencies will be able to charge 20 to 30% of the first year salary, because doing it on your own sometimes can be just as expensive, if not more. So what's the return of investment on these hires? Typically, the time takes for entry level about 6 to 12 months to break even. For your mid-level, I would say about 9 to 18 months to break even. And then for your executives, whether it be directors, VPs, or C-level, you're looking at anywhere between 12 to 24 months. The faster an employee is able to reach their full potential or full productivity, the quicker you're able to get to your return on investment. So the cost of employee turnover. The average turnover cost, now this is somebody that you've hired, maybe they've worked for 6 months, worked for 3 months, worked for 12 months, whatever it might be, is 50 to 200% of an employee's annual salary. This is a cost that is not necessarily direct. It's something that just happens. The factors to this would be a loss of productivity. So all of a sudden, if you have a director who's in charge of a major part of your growth, and that person, for whatever reason, either leaves for another job or isn't sufficient in their role and has to be let go, now you have a loss of productivity because that person who's spearheading certain projects is no longer going to be there. Rehiring costs. So now that you've lost this person, whether they left on their own or what have you, there's a cost to rehiring somebody to be able to fill that role. Whether you promote somebody from internal and then replace them on the back end, or whether you hire another person to come in directly as that in that position, you're still going to have a rehiring cost, which is not just money but also time. And of course, there's onboarding and training. If you're in a startup, you're moving fast, right? You're moving quick and you're breaking things, right? So you're bringing somebody who's new. Now you have to not just onboard and train them, but you also have to get them up to speed. That's going to be something that's pretty difficult to be able to do. And so it obviously costs money there. Turnover disrupts team dynamics and can also slow growth. So what are some of the top reasons employees leave a company? All you have to do is really just list two. We'll give you another 30 seconds. All right, give it another 10. All right, we'll go through each one of these. So the first is management issues. The number one reason somebody leaves a job or a company is because of their manager. It actually is not money. A lot of times people think it might be money, or it might even be the company structure or anything like that. No, it's actually their direct manager. That's enough to be able to have people say, you know what, I want to be able to leave, which is why management training is very, very, very important. Something that Akato Recruiting is able to assist with, as we're a situational leadership 2 trained. But that is something that we definitely feel is and have seen is the number one reason why people end up leaving certain roles. The next, of course, is poor cultural and skill fit. Somebody gets brought on board, probably saying they can do something they can't. The screening wasn't necessarily done up to speed or up to par. And now that they're in the company, they are not working out. They're not with the company culture. They're just not fitting in. Next, you know, you have to let them go. That's another reason for the turnover. As I stated before, inefficient initial screening kind of leads into the second point. Lack of career development. So people, a lot of times when they come into a startup, part of the reason is not just being able to create something out of nothing, being part of a great team, but also they want to be able to grow within the company. They want to be able to say, like, you know what, I started off, you know, on the floors, now I'm on fries, right? So that in position training is something that's very important. Compensation dissatisfaction, ineffective onboarding. Again, hiring people, bringing them on board, and not really giving them an understanding of scope of what their job is going to be, what's to be expected, and pretty much where the company and the position are going. Company misconduct or ethics is another one. Especially with Gen Z workers these days, they want to work with ethical companies, and they want them to be not just at board but way above board. So another thing to think about. Industry changes. And then, of course, burnout. So again, talking about staffing, if you have a bootstrap team, but they're working 12, 16-hour days, some of these folks might have families. Some of these people have friends. They have outside activities. If there's a lot of burnout and not a lot of work-life balance, then that can actually hurt the company more than help. So in that instance, one of the things that we've been able to do with some of our clients that have had situations where people are working 12, 16-hour days is the obvious. Either bring in a contractor to be able to help on a project basis, or if they have the budget for it and the need, hire somebody else, especially if it might be someone who's entry level, cost effective. But that's the kind of consultative work that we do. And of course, we've seen this before. Again, working with Faraday Future in my time at Meta, I was invited to do a TEDx talk where I talked about purposeful driven work. And so, with the reputation that I've been able to build in my industry, I've seen a lot of success, and I've helped a lot of companies be successful. Same with Kara. Kara's worked with a myriad of different companies, everything from Medtronic to NFL Networks to you name it, she's done it. So we've seen a lot of different things. We've hired for pretty much every position you could think of. And so we understand how the ins and outs work, which is why we created Akato Recruiting, to be able to help both investors as well as companies realize their full potential. So some of the solutions to cut costs and improve employee experience, obviously using AI ML to find top candidates in hours, not weeks. You can reduce your time to hire and also your costs by 50%. Leveraging tools like Akato Recruiting source, basically we call it sorcery because it works like magic, to access hidden talent. And then focusing on employee engagement, development, and clear paths to reduce turnover. Of course, outsourcing to Akato Recruiting will optimize costs and improve quality of hires. I put the smiley face on because I absolutely, want people to get a chance to talk to us to see what it is that we're able to do. And so with Sorcery, what we call the sourcing recruiting intelligence engine, the majority of a recruiter's time is spent on sourcing. Just to give you an example, when my time at Meta, there was an entire role called technical sourcer. 40 hours a week, every single day. This person was paid up to $200,000 total cash in, and their only job was to find talent online that may be a fit for Meta at some point, just so we had a pool of people to be able to go to. Not just Meta that does this, also Netflix, Apple, all the FAANG companies have this type of a role, and you could probably imagine it's pretty pricey. In seeing that, and also talking to some of the AI engineers from Meta, what we decided to do was utilize AI in our company, so that way we didn't have to hire talent sourcers. We basically had an algorithm that did it in the amount, like basically a fraction of the amount of time that they'd be able to do it. So our tool searches for candidates based on job title, experience, and also experience progression, skills, companies worked for, location, and then education. And then we can also work on DEI probability. A lot of times companies are looking to be able to diversify their workforce. Diversity of thought basically helps companies to be able to grow because they're able to see different aspects of their product, of their marketing, et cetera. And so what we can do is put into the algorithm different ways of being able to do a DEI guess. People, of course, they have to identify themselves, but what we can do is be able to make a guess and say, of these candidates, this particular pool might be from a diverse slate, whether it be race, gender, religion, military status, etc. So that's something that we can do as well. So I wanted to take this time to kind of show exactly how this algorithm works and why it's an important aspect of what we do.
Hey there, here I'm going to give you a quick example of how things work under the hood. We take a little bit more granular approach. That means we're not automating everything. A lot of things are automated, but we're also having this human expertise element to make sure we are returning the high quality results. So here I'm just going to show you a code for narrowing down the results for a client, which is a machinery company, and they're looking for someone in outside sales, independent of location in the US, and they don't care about the education. So normally we would start with a list of, let's say here it was 30,000 relevant job titles and people from various data partners, including LinkedIn and others. We have a bunch of data like job title, headline, LinkedIn, even social media links and email. Social media are relevant if you want to maybe analyze for a culture fit. Then we might have GitHub and analyze the technologies they work with and all sorts of things about their experience, open source contributions, and so on, and even other, employment history, location, departments, functions, and seniority. So here I would take a bulk of, the relevant candidates out there in the market, kick out anyone who's not in the US and it's not matching the seniority that we're looking at. Like we don't want VPs, we're looking for mainly entry positions and maybe sales managers. We can put, for example, a gender guess based on the name, and add that into the mix of ranking because some companies they need to hit some quota, maybe it's a public company or so. And then we have analysis of their past experience in terms of what departments they work with. So we want strictly salespeople. So we're kicking out anyone who's been, or in other departments and hasn't stuck with sales, strictly with sales, other than like engineering and technical sales, basically. Same with the departments and the functions. We want strictly people who work with sales, not people who work with, I don't know, education or support and other things, product management. So that way, we are now having much smaller data set, which is way more relevant. Look at the headline. We can infer a lot of, guesses there, but at the very basic, we're kicking out anyone who says they're retired in the headline. Then we're analyzing the average length of their past jobs, how many jobs they held in the past, and how many concurrent jobs they're holding now. So for example, someone with multiple jobs right now, they probably are not very committed to their current employer. So we're not looking at those. We don't want job hoppers as well, but we also don't want someone who's been 40 years in one job because they're probably not going to change. So we can also analyze the promotions. For example, looking at LinkedIn, if we see someone holding multiple job positions at one company, so we see a progress, and that might be a sign of someone who's achieving and actually, it's a great employee. Then we have macro data, like number of employees of their employers and industry and so on. So we can find companies that people with experience in machinery industry, oil and gas industry, mining industry, like all the relevant industries, and also companies of a similar size. Like someone who works with 200,000 employee company will not be relevant for this client because this client is a 500 employee company. And then we have other macro data, like for example, based on their location, where they are based, we can see the average annual salary for the job. So if this person doesn't care about the location, we can add another criteria which are based on, like how much return on investment are you going to get with this particular employee in that particular market. So that's another, factor we put into the mix. And then eventually, we use all of these criteria to create a ranking and, kick out the outliers and come up with someone with decent experience and, who's been achieving well in their position, in their current job or previous jobs, who is in the right market in terms of return on investment for the employer, and a bunch of other things, relevant industry experience, and so on. And for example, here we ended up with 100 most relevant.
Right. So that's basically how the product works, or how the algorithm works. And so you can imagine we've made this in-house, working with Mikael and his team to make sure that the algorithm that we have works as if it's me, but on steroids, like a room full of me, right? So that's kind of what the idea is. And by cutting down that time and that extra work, we're actually able to create a different type of cost structure, which saves our clients a lot of money.
Right.
Which Kara will get into.
Yeah. So Akato is recruiting AI ML Advantage. It's AI powered talent sourcing. So it's identifying top 1% of candidates quickly, which is key. Hidden talent. It uncovers candidates not visible on traditional platforms. It reduces the time and cost. It saves over 50% of time to hire and recruiting costs. We are a partnership, so our team operates as a fractional talent acquisition team. So we're an extension to the company. We are preferred by Keiretsu. So we are a trusted partner with the Keiretsu Capital Group, which we appreciate and are excited about. So who we are. In closing, one of the biggest challenges we face in our industry is the stigma surrounding the word recruiting. Too often, recruiting is perceived as transactional, quick hires, cookie cutter solutions, and impersonal processes. We are different, therefore we are Akato. We don't follow traditional model because we know that real success comes from true partnerships. We pour time, energy, and deep expertise into every single relationship we build. We refuse to work with just anyone. We are selective, we are exclusive because we believe in the value of finding the right fit both for our clients and for ourselves. Our clients see the value of our program and experience. Our model is disruptive and therefore makes non-early adopters hesitant to leave the archaic models. That's understandable. For forward-thinking companies that understand the changing nature of today's technological world. Our clients know that we are not just filling positions, we are shaping futures. We take the heavy lifting off their plates by reducing the costs and time to fill by 50%, so they can focus on their bigger picture while knowing they are receiving not just what they need, but the absolute best. Our number one goal is to alleviate the entire recruitment process, offering something far greater than a service. We offer a partnership that transforms how they build their teams.
Awesome.
This is why we started Akatel.
And that's it. So thank you very much for taking the time. We open this up to questions. To anyone who has any, please, go ahead and unmute yourself and let us know.
Sweet. Okay. Fantastic job. Some of those numbers were so shocking in terms of the actual cost
Yeah, it's a lot.
of losing people, and just the timeline to hiring as well and onboarding. And so, yeah, I mean, it could be certainly devastating to companies.
Yeah, and I can tell you that in my experience working with different startups, whether it be consultant or even when I was my time at Faraday, being able to hire somebody who was supposed to take on a certain project, and then that person, ends up going to say Neo, and you're kind of stuck holding a bag on something that was new and innovative. It's, as a recruiter, it's very annoying. So I had to put in some things in place to make sure that we found people who understood what we were trying to do, and would be willing to burn some midnight oil to stick with it. So it's definitely something that a lot of founders and investors might not feel the pain of until it actually happens.
Right. Oh.
Yeah.
Dan Connolly, it looks like he had to jump off, but he did have a number of questions. He writes, is what happens when there are massive layoffs? Big pharmas in New Jersey are letting go hundreds. Bayer and J&J just announced, and I think Bristol Myers letting folks go. I recognize there's an internal play, but most are what? What are the marked negative? Are they to be offered less pay? What's the trend in hiring in big pharma?
Yeah, I mean, in the trends in big pharma tend to be kind of, unfortunately, because it's big pharma and they're kind of at the whim or the mercy of the market prices, et cetera. There's a lot of it's a little bit different than, say, the startups, because they're looking at how to maximize profits while minimizing costs. So I'd have to look at those companies specifically to see if there's any form of like technological upgrades that they've had internally that would make it so that they could say, oh, for instance, if there's a new process or new machinery, et cetera, sometimes that can make certain roles archaic. I'd have to look at each one of those cases individually to kind of take a look at it, but there's usually an answer. And if their profits are doing relatively well and they're doing layoffs, then chances are they have some either new deal, they've had a purchase of another company, something has happened that has kind of offset that workforce. And, again, because of shareholder responsibility, they will find ways of minimizing costs and maximizing their profits.
There's a question here from Randy. I'm not sure if he's still here, but he wrote, I think, earlier in the deck here. I'd be interested in your thoughts on how you factor the client's time as additional cost to the recruitment process.
Yeah, so time is money, and typically what we do is we factor that in literally by how many hours are they doing the recruiting based on what their salary is, right? Like that's usually the best way to do it, because if you pay somebody to do a certain service for you and that service is $100 an hour, let's say, if half of that time they're not doing that service, but they're actually trying to do hiring or recruiting, and that's not what their job is, then that is the cost of that. You're losing that ability to be able to to fulfill that job description based on that. Now, for a lot of managers who are doing the hiring, part of their job description should be listed in as you're spending this much time doing interviews, hiring, training, etc. And when that gets out of whack, that's when the cost goes up because you're losing money in one area, but you're also increasing the costs in the recruiting area on that particular manager's job description. So a lot of times what most companies do is they'll literally take a look and say, how much time are you spending on this? I spoke with somebody who is working with software that sells to the space tech organizations, and he's the director of customer success. He said that he was spending 75% of his day on trying to hire his team, and it was tedious and very annoying because that's not what he does for a living. So not only is he trying to recruit for himself, but he's recruiting for himself inefficiently. So there's an additional cost there too, right? So like that's kind of the way that I would break it down, especially when you have directors or managers, and you've seen this sometimes on your LinkedIn where it'll say, there'll be a director of say product, and his LinkedIn, his or her LinkedIn profile will have hiring as the tag. That individual is spending time putting up postings, checking to see who's applied. All these things are taking away from the day-to-day, in which for a startup, there's probably a lot of work. So there's definitely a cost to it. And that's why with Akato Recruiting, what we do is we come in as a very low cost fractional recruiting team to be able to alleviate that pressure, work with that manager to find the right people to be able to bring that in so he or she can concentrate on what they need to do, which is help the company make their milestones and get to the next.
Yeah. And I have a question on that. Sorry, but Kara, and then please, Scott, go ahead, Kara.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that also when they do need to hire, they'll hire, as we've seen a lot, Ose and I, and talk to many startups, they'll hire a very green new recruiter because they're cheaper. But if you think about the lead time that it's going to take to train them and get them up to speed, now who's going to train them too? So you don't have training for them. They're new. So if you think about, it's going to take them at least, 6 months to a year to get up to speed. So we see that all the time as well. And then, when they really come to it, they do end up going to the agencies that are super expensive. And now they're spending budget that they don't have. So
yeah,
ouch. To really offer everything as a whole.
Right.
Scott, go ahead, jump in.
Yeah, hi. Great presentation, you guys. I'm not sure if it was Ose or Kara who had some experience in the game industry. But I've been a hiring manager in the game industry for I don't know, forever, in the 80s. Yeah. And so I've seen technologies moving all through it, all the way through. Great to see you guys are keeping up with the technologies of today. The one thing that I have a thought about is that in team recruiting for game teams, right? I mean, we can all now call ourselves all neurodivergent, right? So right. We used to say we were just all part of the island of misfit toys. But what you have to do is you have to find people that can get along, plays well with others. And so a lot of that I didn't see in your algorithm there. So I can see how you could, pack it down to a few, but it seems like so much of what goes on in the game industry is, it's more like say, if you're going to use AI recruiting for the Seahawks, you have to kind of look a little further, a little harder than that. Right. Fortunately, our fees aren't like the Seahawks, so that we have players. So that's a good plus. But how do you kind of compensate for that team dynamic part or do you just leave that to the end and you just provide a list of people and then we go hack through those people and see if we know any of them previously or whatever?
Well, there's a couple things. So part of our process, and I'll kind of explain exactly how it is that we operate to have people understand why the fractional talent acquisition play is a lot better. But for instance, when the first thing we do is we sit down with the hiring teams and we try to find out from them what the company culture is. That's one of the things that we kind of got to. And I used to do, I was working for Meta. And in fact, I used to primarily work for Quest especially when it came to content. So, reaching out to people from Sega, 2K, etc. Like, I get it. You work on a game, you work on a project, it starts to wind down, and then what happens, right? Like, then you have to go somewhere else. And like you said, a lot of times those teams get to be so close together that they come up with their own kind of culture. And then when they go somewhere else, that culture could be totally different. And so that's the conversation that we would end up having with those hiring managers I mean, that's what I used to do, right? We sit down and say, like, do we want people from Activision Blizzard, or do we want people who worked at Namco, right? So like the Namco folks would work with, and so that's something that we would do one-on-one. And then from there, we can actually source for those specific companies based on the time frame. So, and then of course, after that, we do, it's still recruiting, right? The one thing about AI learning is, it'll help make things more efficient, but it can't replace the actual soul of a human. So from there, we actually get a chance to talk to them, and our screening is such where we want to make sure that there is that culture fit. We kind of want to make sure that we specify that, and then we can kind of drill that down from there. One of the clients that we're currently working with actually has a culture fit test that they put out. So, that's a thing that they do as well, on top of what we already do, because we do stress that if you find somebody that's not a good fit for your culture and is not a good fit for your organization, it will cost you money in the long run. And we don't want to be a part, we don't want to have that happen on our watch. So that's why we work very hard on being able to source people and then concentrating on making sure they're a fit. So once we source these group of folks, when we start to reach out to them, there's two things. One, we sit down with the hiring team to say, of this list, who are you interested in? Right? Let's sit down for 30 minutes and go through our top 10 people, right? Because it ranks them. Are any of these people any good? Do you want to reach out to them? So on and so forth. From there, our pitch is different. It's not, hey, I have an opportunity you might be a fit for. It's, I have an opportunity that I have a company that wants to talk to you. Right. And it's a lot more of a pervasive pitch than, hey, I'm just a recruiter like everybody else. I might have something that fits. I don't know. Right. But like, if they know for a fact, oh, if I talk to this person, there's a company that wants to talk to me. Okay, cool. Let's have the conversation. Go ahead, Greg.
Thanks, Jose.
Yeah. So, excuse me. So I help us understand your industry as well, because there's, recruitment firms. But so what's the business model there? You mentioned fractional talent partner. There's retainer, contingency. Can you help us understand that?
Yeah, so basically we work with different clients based on what it is that they need. Typically what we've done is we've basically worked on retainer as a fractional talent acquisition team. And we can do that with multiple clients because, again, we're saving time on the sourcing. So it's not like, oh, we have to work with this one client and it's going to take us, 70% of our time should be sourcing. That's not the case at all. 70% of our time is actually making sure that we're finding the right people and getting them in. That's ideally the way we want to work because it saves a lot of money. So we don't have anything where there's like a success fee where we charge for every person that we place. It is strictly a monthly retainer. Think of us as like, 2 contract recruiters for basically less than the price of one, right? Like that's basically the way that we're trying to pitch this because we know that as startups, they have their budgets. I again, at the beginning, obviously people are not necessarily in tune with this disruptive way of working. So they want to work on contingency. And both me and Kara, when they say that, we're like, oh, okay, because we're going to end up finding the person. We're going to end up placing them. And then we're getting a check for $25,000 where it didn't have to be that at all. Right. Like we could have found multiple people for them for less than that. So it's one of those where it's hard to explain it sometimes, but it is a cost saver. It's a time saver. It is the future of recruiting. We've just built it in-house because we've been doing this for a combined over 40 years. Now, if a company wants to work contingency, we'll do it. It's not ideal the way that we want to work because it kind of puts us back into this traditional recruiting bucket. And as you can probably see, we hate that. But we want to be more of a partner than anything else, right? We don't want to just be like, hey, we found this person, give me the check. Okay, bye. Call me when you need me again, right? We want to help in all aspects. We want to help in interview training. We want to help in, staffing planning, in resources. We want to be basically like a resource or a consultant as opposed to we're just here to recruit people, get your money and leave, right? That's kind of the difference. Now, can we do that? Sure. Do we want to do that? Not really.
It's still, yeah, it's case by case.
Yeah.
And we are still set up differently than a traditional contingency staffing agency, the way we go about it in the entirety. So
Okay. And sorry if this is just such a, it sounds like such a dumb question, but
It's okay. No such thing as a dumb question.
For the layman's here, contingency, like you're obviously very familiar with that word and what it means and the outcomes and everything, but break it down for somebody that's never even heard that word. What does that mean?
Okay, so contingency is the standard way that people have used recruiting, which is a finder's fee on identifying, screening, and presenting a candidate. So if somebody says, I'm looking for an embedded software engineer, and we say, awesome, we'll work on contingency, meaning if we find somebody that you hire, you owe us 25%, the equivalent of 25% of the first year salary. That embedded software engineer makes, say, $20,000. What that means is at 25%, you owe me $50,000. I used to work in internal recruiting. We had a budget. I hated that, right?
Right.
Like, I also used to work in external recruiting where I loved it, but like for the company, it doesn't help, right? Because it's much better to work with a company like ours who would say we can work on a contingent on a retainer basis, and we can find you 2 or 3 of those people for a fraction of that cost. And we can do it efficiently. We can do it well. They will fit your culture. Like it's a no-brainer. And that's kind of the difficult part to be able to explain to a lot of people who are used to, recruiters constantly reaching out to them, asking for this 20% placement fee, where for us, it's more of, we want to be a partner to you. We want to give you that white glove service. If you're out of state, we'll fly to you and learn your company. Like that's what we want to do for companies that are within Keiretsu. Again, I have my MBA in entrepreneurship. I understand how difficult it is to get a startup off the ground and how costly it can be in the long run. I also understand the true costs of hiring people and having employees. And I've been there before. So because of that, I'm trying to find a way to help startups to be able to grow and also make sure that investors who are giving their money to these startups don't see that money get burned up.
Yeah.
Like it kind of is what it is. So that's why we love the relationship we have with Keiretsu. We're very thankful because this is the type of work that we want to do with the type of companies we want to work with.
It's incredible. Yeah, I saw this as a great fit from the beginning. First time we talked, Osei. We are at the top of the hour, and I would ask the team, for anybody that is interested in joining future Keiretsu Forum events, we do have a number of coming up in October here. See if the team can launch our events poll. Please do go ahead and fill out the poll, and we can go ahead and get you registered and help streamline that process for you. We have some great deal flow coming up next week, and also the later part of October as we near Halloween. And I want to thank Kara Allen and Osei Gyamfi from Akoto Recruiting of LA for being here, just like imparting us with this wisdom and being so open to telling us kind of your insider secrets. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah, and if anyone wants a copy of the presentation, they want to take a look at it, please just let me know. I'll have it. I'll have the slides available to Greg, so that way he can share it, just in case anyone wants to take a look at some of the numbers or some of the information there.
Incredible. Okay, and sorry if my audio is a little bit glitchy. I apologize.
That's okay.
Thanks everybody. That looks like we're right at 1 o'clock, so we'll drop off and we'll see you again on our next event.
Awesome.
Thanks everybody.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Happy weekend.
Thanks. You too. Bye everybody. All right. Is my audio glitchy there?
Yeah, it was like towards the end when you were talking, and I was like, oh no. But
okay. Yeah, I still didn't put in the Starlink because the setup was a little bit more difficult than I thought, so I have to do it.
it always is, right? They can't make it easy.
No. So a little more rigmarole, but Yeah. So okay, good. So all in all, that was really good, and we have a couple folks here still in our attendee list. So I'm gonna go ahead and close out the meeting and.